What if I told you there was a man who never died? What if I told you this man walked through 10 different levels of heaven and saw things that would change everything you think you know about God, angels, and the universe itself? What if I told you that this amazing story has been hidden from most people for thousands of years? Today, we are going to talk about one of the most incredible journeys ever recorded. This is the story of Enoch, a man who lived long ago in the time before the Great Flood. His story is found in an ancient book that many churches do not want you to read. They say it is too strange, too different from what they teach. But this book tells us things that will blow your mind and help you understand so much more about heaven and God. The Bible itself tells us about Enoch in just a few words. It says that Enoch walked with God for 300 years, and then one day he was gone because God took him away. But that short story leaves out all the amazing details. What really happened to Enoch? Where did God take him? What did he see? These are the questions that the Book of Enoch answers for us. This book is not just any old story. It was written thousands of years ago by people who knew things we have forgotten. For many centuries, this book was lost. People thought it was gone forever. But then, about 200 years ago, explorers found copies of it hidden away in old places. When they translated it and read it, they could not believe what they found. The story tells us that Enoch was taken on a journey through 10 different heavens. Each heaven was like a different world with its own purpose and its own amazing things to see. Enoch saw angels doing jobs we never knew about. He saw places of incredible beauty and places of terrible punishment. He saw the secrets of how the sun and moon work. He even saw the face of God himself. But here is the thing that makes some people uncomfortable. This story tells us things that are different from what many churches teach today. It talks about angels who did bad things and came to earth. It describes heaven in ways that sound almost like science fiction. It tells us about creatures and beings that seem too strange to be real. This is why some religious leaders tell people not to read it. But should we be afraid of this story? Should we hide from it just because it is different? I do not think so. This story has survived for thousands of years because it has something important to tell us. It helps us understand that God and heaven are much bigger and more amazing than we ever imagined. It shows us that there are mysteries in the universe that we are only beginning to understand. So let me take you on this incredible journey. Let me tell you about Enoch and his amazing trip through the 10 heavens. Get ready to hear about things that will stretch your mind and fill you with wonder. Get ready to learn secrets that have been hidden for way too long. This is the story that some people do not want you to know, but it is a story that everyone should hear. Long, long ago, when the world was still young and people lived much longer than they do today, there was a man named Enoch. He was not like other people. While most people in his time had forgotten about God and were doing bad things, Enoch was different. He remembered God and tried to live the way God wanted him to. The Bible tells us that Enoch lived for 365 years. That might sound like a very long time to us, but back then, people lived much longer. What made Enoch special was not how long he lived, but how he lived. The Bible says that Enoch walked with God. This does not mean he just took walks with God like you might walk with a friend. It means that every day, in everything he did, Enoch tried to stay close to God and do what God wanted. Enoch had a son named Methuselah, who would become famous for living longer than any other person in history. But even though Enoch was a father and had a family, he never stopped walking with God. Day after day, year after year, for 3 whole centuries, Enoch kept his friendship with God strong and real. During this time, the world around Enoch was getting worse and worse. People were being mean to each other. They were forgetting about God and doing terrible things. There were even strange things happening that most people did not understand. Angels who were supposed to be good had come down from heaven and were causing trouble on earth. But through all of this, Enoch stayed faithful to God. Because Enoch was so faithful, God began to show him things that other people could not see. God gave Enoch special dreams and visions. Enoch could see things that were happening in the spirit world. He could understand things about heaven and earth that other people could not understand. God was preparing Enoch for something very special. Then one day, when Enoch was 365 years old, something amazing happened. It was the first day of the first month of the year. Enoch was in his house, resting on his bed. As he lay there, he fell into a deep sleep. But this was not an ordinary sleep. This was the kind of sleep that God sometimes gives to people when he wants to show them something important. As Enoch slept, he began to have a dream unlike any dream he had ever had before. In the dream, he felt a great sadness come over his heart. He did not know why he was so sad, but tears began to flow from his eyes. He was crying in his sleep, but he did not know what he was crying about. Then, suddenly, Enoch was not alone anymore. 2 men appeared beside his bed, but these were not ordinary men. They were huge, much bigger than any human being Enoch had ever seen. Their faces shone like the sun, so bright that it was almost hard to look at them. Their eyes burned like lamps full of fire. When they opened their mouths, fire came out instead of just words. Their clothes seemed to sing with beautiful music, and their wings sparkled brighter than gold. Their hands were whiter than fresh snow. These amazing beings stood at the head of Enoch's bed and called his name. When they spoke, Enoch woke up from his sleep. But when he opened his eyes, the 2 beings were still there. This had not been just a dream. These were real angels, and they had come to see him. Enoch was so amazed and scared that he fell down and bowed before them. His face changed because he was so frightened. He had never seen anything like these beings before. But the angels spoke to him in kind voices. They said, "Be brave, Enoch. Do not be afraid. The eternal God has sent us to you. Today, you will come with us to heaven. But first, you must tell your sons and your family what they need to do while you are gone. No one should look for you until the Lord brings you back to them." Enoch knew that these were messengers from God, so he obeyed them quickly. He got up from his bed and went out of his house, shutting the door behind him, just as the angels had told him to do. Then he called for his sons. Their names were Methuselah, Regem, and Gaidad. When they came to him, Enoch told them about the amazing beings he had seen and what they had said to him. Enoch looked at his sons with love and sadness in his eyes. He said to them, "Listen, my children. I do not know where I am going or what is going to happen to me. But while I am gone, I want you to remember some very important things." He told them, "Do not turn away from God. Always walk in front of His face and keep His commandments. Do not stop praying, because prayer is what saves you. If you do these things, the Lord will not take away His blessings from the work of your hands." Enoch continued to give his sons advice. He said, "Do not be stingy with the gifts that the Lord gives you, and the Lord will not be stingy with His gifts to you. Always give God the first and best of everything you have. Bless the Lord with the first animals born to your herds and the first of your children. If you do this, the blessing will be on you forever." Then Enoch warned them about something very important. He said, "Do not turn away from the Lord to worship fake gods. Do not bow down to idols that cannot see or hear or help you. These fake gods did not make heaven and earth or anything else. They will be destroyed, and everyone who worships them will be destroyed too." Finally, Enoch said, "May God make your hearts true, so that you always respect and honor Him. And remember, no one should look for me until the Lord brings me back to you." After Enoch had finished speaking to his sons, the two angels called to him. It was time to go. The angels spread out their great wings and lifted Enoch up into the air. They carried him higher and higher, up through the clouds, until they reached the first heaven. As they flew upward, Enoch looked down and saw the earth getting smaller and smaller below him. He could see the clouds moving beneath his feet. The air around him was different up here, thinner and cleaner than the air he was used to breathing. Everything was new and strange and wonderful. The angels placed Enoch gently on the clouds of the first heaven. Here, for the first time, Enoch began to see things that no human being had ever seen before. He was about to start the most amazing journey that anyone had ever taken. He was going to visit 10 different levels of heaven and learn secrets that had been hidden since the beginning of time. In the first heaven, Enoch saw things that made him understand how God takes care of the world. This heaven was like a giant warehouse where God kept all the things needed to make weather happen on earth. Enoch saw huge storehouses full of snow, piled up like white mountains. There were other storehouses full of ice, sparkling and cold. There were places where rain was kept, waiting for the right time to fall on the earth below. But what amazed Enoch most were the angels who worked in this first heaven. These were not just any angels. These were special angels whose job it was to control the weather on earth. Enoch saw 200 angels who were in charge of the stars and all the heavenly movements. These angels had wings and could fly from place to place faster than the wind. They flew around all the planets and made sure everything in the sky worked the way it was supposed to. The angels showed Enoch the places where dew was stored. The dew looked like olive oil, but sparkled with many colors like a rainbow. There were angels standing guard over these storehouses. making sure that the dew was released at just the right times to water the plants on earth. Enoch also saw treasuries full of different kinds of flowers, but these were not ordinary flowers like the ones that grow on earth. These heavenly flowers were more beautiful and more numerous than any earthly flowers. They glowed with their own light and filled the air with the most wonderful smells. The angels who guarded these treasuries knew exactly when to open and close them. As Enoch watched, he began to understand something amazing. Every drop of rain that falls on earth, every snowflake that comes down in winter, every bit of dew that appears on the grass in the morning, all of it is carefully controlled by these angels in the first heaven. Nothing happens by accident. God has a plan for every bit of weather, and his angels make sure that plan is carried out perfectly. The angels explain to Enoch that their work never stops. Day and night, they watch over the earth and send exactly the right amount of rain, snow, and dew to each place. They know which places need water and which places have enough. They know when farmers need rain for their crops and when people need sunshine to dry their clothes. Every detail is planned and watched over by these faithful angels. This first heaven was like the control room for all the weather on earth. From here, the angels could see everything that was happening below. They could see when drought was coming to a land and send rain to prevent it. They could see when floods might happen and hold back the rain until it was safe. They worked together like a great team, each one doing his part to take care of the world below. Enoch spent time watching these angels work, and he was filled with wonder at how perfectly everything was organized. He realized that what people on earth call natural weather was actually the result of careful work by God's angels. The rain did not just happen by itself. The snow did not just decide to fall. Every bit of weather was a gift from God, delivered by his faithful servants in the first heaven. But as amazing as the first heaven was, the angels told Enoch that this was just the beginning of his journey. There were 9 more heavens to see, each one more wonderful and surprising than the last. So the angels lifted Enoch up once again, and they carried him higher into the second heaven. The second heaven was completely different from the first. As soon as Enoch arrived there, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with cold. This place was dark, darker than any night on earth. It was a darkness so thick that it seemed like you could touch it. Even though there were no clouds here, no light from the sun or stars could reach this place. As Enoch's eyes got used to the darkness, he began to see something that filled him with sadness and fear. Hanging in this dark place were prisoners. These were not human prisoners, but angels who had once been bright and beautiful servants of God. Now they hung in chains, waiting for their punishment to be complete. These angel prisoners looked terrible. Their faces were full of sadness and shame. They could not speak because of their guilt and sorrow. They just hung there in the darkness, knowing that they had brought this punishment on themselves by disobeying God. The angels who were guiding Enoch explained to him what had happened to these prisoners. They said, These are the ones who turned away from the Lord. They decided they did not want to obey God's commands anymore. Instead, they made their own plans and followed their own prince, a fallen angel who led them into rebellion. Enoch felt very sorry for these fallen angels. Even though they had done wrong, it was sad to see beings who had once been beautiful and good now suffering in this dark place. The prisoner angels saw Enoch and bowed down to him. With their eyes, they begged him to pray for them. They managed to say to him, "Man of God, please pray for us to the Lord." But Enoch did not know what to say. He answered them, "Who am I, just a human man, that I should pray for angels? I do not even know where I am going or what is going to happen to me. Who is going to pray for me?" This second heaven was a place of waiting. The fallen angels here were not being tortured like they would be later. They were just waiting in darkness for their final judgment. They knew that they had chosen to disobey God, and now they had to face the results of their choice. Some of them had been here for a very long time, and some would be here until the end of the world. Enoch learned that these were not the same fallen angels who had caused the most trouble on earth. Those angels were imprisoned somewhere even worse. These angels in the second heaven had committed lesser sins, but still serious enough that they could not remain free in heaven. The darkness in the second heaven was not just the absence of light, it was the absence of God's joy and peace. When angels choose to disobey God, they cut themselves off from the light and happiness that come from being close to Him. The darkness was really a picture of what it feels like to be separated from God. As Enoch looked around this sad place, he began to understand something important about good and evil. He saw that every choice has results. When we choose to obey God, we get to stay in His light and joy. But when we choose to disobey God, we end up in darkness and sadness. Even angels, who are much more powerful than humans, cannot escape the results of their choices. The guiding angels did not want Enoch to stay too long in this sad place. They could see that it was making him feel heavy and sorrowful. So they took him by the arms and lifted him up to the third heaven. But as they left, Enoch looked back one more time at the fallen angels hanging in the darkness, and he whispered a prayer that somehow God would have mercy on them. When Enoch arrived in the third heaven, it was like stepping from the darkest night into the most beautiful morning that had ever been. The difference was so great that Enoch had to close his eyes for a moment to let them get used to the brightness and beauty. This third heaven contained paradise, the most wonderful place that Enoch had ever seen or could ever imagine. As far as his eyes could see, there were trees in full bloom. Every tree was perfect, with leaves that sparkled like jewels and flowers that gave off the most amazing smells. The fruits on these trees were ripe and beautiful, and they glowed with their own inner light. But in the very center of paradise stood a tree that was more magnificent than all the others. This was the tree of life, the most special tree in all of creation. Enoch could not find words to describe how beautiful this tree was. It had a wonderful smell that was better than any perfume. Its appearance was more lovely than anything else that existed. The tree of life was huge. From every direction, it looked good and healthy. Its trunk was crimson red, and it seemed to be made of fire, but a fire that did not burn or hurt. This amazing tree covered the whole of paradise with its branches. It had something from every other tree that had ever been made. Every kind of fruit that existed could be found on this one tree. The roots of the tree of life went down deep into paradise, all the way to the place where paradise connected to the earth. This tree was the source of life for everything in creation. As long as this tree existed, life would continue in the universe. From paradise flowed 4 rivers that were unlike any rivers on earth. One river was full of honey and milk mixed together. Another river produced oil and wine. These rivers were not just water, but liquid joy and happiness. They flowed quietly and peacefully through paradise, making soft, musical sounds as they moved. These 4 rivers divided paradise into different sections, but then they came together again and flowed out of paradise toward the earth. From there, they divided into 40 smaller rivers that spread out across the world. This was how the goodness and life from paradise reached every part of the earth. In paradise, there was no tree that did not bear fruit. Every plant was healthy and productive. Every place was blessed. The grass was soft and green, and flowers of every color imaginable covered the ground like a beautiful carpet. But paradise was not empty of people to take care of it. There were 300 angels living there, and these were some of the most beautiful angels Enoch had ever seen. They were very bright, and their faces shone with joy and peace. These angels had only one job, and they loved their job. All day long, every day, they took care of paradise and sang songs of praise to God. The songs these angels sang were not like any music Enoch had ever heard. Their voices were so beautiful and so perfectly in harmony that listening to them made Enoch feel like he was hearing the music that all other music was trying to copy. They never got tired of singing, and they never stopped praising God. Enoch said to his guide angels, "How very pleasant this place is." The angels smiled and said to him, "This place, Enoch, has been prepared for people who are righteous. It is for people who suffer all kinds of trouble in their lives, but still try to do what is right. It is for people who stop themselves from doing wrong things and who make fair and honest decisions." They continued, "This place is for people who give bread to hungry people and who give clothes to people who have no clothes. It is for people who help those who have fallen down and who take care of people who are hurt and children who have no parents. This place is for people who live without doing anything really wrong and who worship only God. For all these people, this place has been prepared as their home forever." Enoch was amazed to learn that paradise was not just a beautiful place to look at. It was actually prepared as a home for people who tried to live good lives on earth. No matter how much trouble they had faced, no matter how much they had suffered for doing right, they would get to live in this perfect place forever. But then the angels told Enoch that there was something else he needed to see in the 3rd heaven. They took him to the northern part of this heaven, and suddenly everything changed. Here was a place that was the complete opposite of paradise. This other part of the third heaven was frightful and terrible. Instead of beautiful trees and flowers, there were all kinds of torture and punishment. Instead of bright light, there was cruel darkness and black gloom. There was no gentle light here at all, but black fire blazed up constantly, and rivers of fire flowed through the whole place. In some areas, it was burning hot with fire everywhere, but in other areas, it was freezing cold, with ice that never melted. The rivers of fire would make things very dry, but then the ice would freeze them again. It was a place where nothing was ever comfortable or peaceful. In this terrible place were dark and merciless angels who carried tools for causing pain. These angels had no pity or kindness in them. Their job was to punish people who had chosen to do evil during their lives on earth, and they did their job without feeling sorry for anyone. Enoch was very upset when he saw this place. He said, "Oh no, how very frightful this place is." The guide angels said to him, "This place, Enoch, has been prepared for people who do not honor God. It is for people who practice sins that are against nature, like the terrible things that were done in the city of Sodom. It is for people who practice witchcraft and magic, and who try to talk to demons." They went on, "This place is for people who brag about the evil things they do. It is for people who steal from others, and who lie, and who say mean things about people, and who want things that belong to other people. It is for people who are never satisfied with what they have, and who commit adultery, and who murder other people." The angels continued their explanation. "This place is also for people who steal the souls of others by tricking them. It is for people who grab poor people by the throat and take away everything they own. It is for people who make themselves rich by cheating others and lying to them." They said, "This place is for people who could help hungry people eat, but instead they let them starve to death. It is for people who could give clothes to people who are naked, but instead they take away even the last piece of clothing that person has. This place is for people who do not remember that God made them, and instead they bow down to fake idols that cannot see or hear or help anyone. These idols are worth nothing, and they will be destroyed. For all these people, this place has been prepared as their punishment forever." Enoch realized that just as paradise was prepared for people who chose to do good, this terrible place was prepared for people who chose to do evil. It was not that God wanted to hurt people, but that people who chose evil had made themselves fit only for a place of evil. The contrast between these two parts of the third heaven taught Enoch something very important. Every person gets to choose how they want to live. Those who choose to be kind, honest, and helpful to others get to live forever in the most beautiful place imaginable. But those who choose to be cruel, dishonest, and harmful to others end up in a place that matches the darkness they chose to have in their hearts. After seeing both paradise and the place of punishment, Enoch understood that God is both perfectly loving and perfectly just. God's love prepares the most wonderful home for those who want to be good. But God's justice also makes sure that those who choose evil and hurt others cannot continue to do so forever. The angels could see that Enoch had learned what he needed to learn in the third heaven. Now it was time to show him even more amazing things. They lifted him up and carried him to the fourth heaven, where he would see the secrets of how the sun and moon work. In the fourth heaven, Enoch discovered the amazing machinery that makes the sun and moon move across the sky. This was like looking inside the world's most incredible clock, except that this clock controlled time and seasons for the entire earth. The angels showed Enoch all the movements and paths of the sun and moon. He could see exactly how they travel across the sky and why sometimes the sun is higher and sometimes it is lower. Enoch was allowed to measure the movements of both the sun and moon, and he compared their light. He discovered that the sun's light is 7 times brighter than the moon's light. The sun was like a huge ball of fire that never got tired of shining. Enoch could see the circular path that the sun follows as it moves across the sky. The sun traveled this path with incredible speed, faster than any wind on earth, and it never stopped or slowed down. But the sun did not travel alone. Enoch saw that there were 4 great stars that went with the sun. Each of these stars had 1,000 smaller stars under its command. 2 of these great stars, with their 1,000 followers, traveled on the right side of the sun, and 2 traveled on the left side. Altogether, that meant 8,000 stars were traveling with the sun all the time. Even more amazing, there were 150,000 angels who accompanied the sun during the daytime. At night, there were 1,000 angels who stayed with the sun, and 100 special angels flew in front of the sun's chariot. These angels had 6 wings each, and they were made of flaming fire. As the sun blazed across the sky, it was so bright and hot that it set these 100 angels on fire. But this did not hurt them, because they were made to burn with holy fire. They loved being part of the sun's journey across the sky. But perhaps the most amazing things Enoch saw in the fourth heaven were the creatures called phoenixes and chalkedras. These were not like any animals that exist on earth. They were flying spirits that were part of the sun's family. The phoenixes and chalkedras had very strange and wonderful forms. Their bodies were like lions, strong and powerful. Their tails were like serpents, long and flexible. But their heads were like crocodiles, with big mouths full of teeth. Their appearance was multicolored like rainbows, with every color you could imagine flowing across their bodies. These creatures were enormous. Each one was 900 measures long, bigger than any building on earth. They had wings like angels, but each creature had 12 wings instead of just 2. With all these wings, they could fly incredibly fast and do amazing things in the sky. The job of the phoenixes and chalkedras was to accompany the sun and do whatever God commanded them to do. They carried heat and dew to different parts of the earth. When some places needed to be warmer, these creatures would bring heat from the sun. When other places needed moisture, they would bring dew from the heavenly storehouses. Enoch watched as the sun went through its daily cycle. The sun would rise in the east, travel across the sky giving light and heat to the earth, and then set in the west. But what happened to the sun at night was something that people on earth never knew about. The angels took Enoch to the eastern part of the fourth heaven and showed him the gates where the sun comes out each morning. There were 6 huge gates, and each gate was exactly 61¼ stadia wide. Enoch was able to measure these gates carefully, and he was amazed at how precisely everything was made. The sun did not come out of the same gate every day. Depending on what time of year it was, the sun would use different gates. During some parts of the year, it would come out of the first gate for 42 days. Then it would switch to the second gate for 35 days. Then the third gate for 35 days, and so on through all 6 gates. After the sun had gone through all 6 gates in one direction, it would turn around and go back the other way. It would go through the 6th gate for 35 days, then the 5th gate for 35 days, and so on, back to the first gate again. This is what made the different seasons happen on earth. Then the angels carried Enoch to the western part of the fourth heaven to show him the gates where the sun goes down each evening. There were 6 gates here too, exactly matching the eastern gates. The sun would set through whichever western gate matched the eastern gate it had risen from that morning. But here, Enoch learned something amazing about what happens to the sun at night. When the sun reached the western gates, it would take off its bright crown of light. 400 angels would take this crown and carry it to God Himself for safekeeping during the night. While the sun's crown was with God, the sun would turn its chariot around and travel back under the earth to the eastern gates. It traveled on wheels during the night, but without its great light and brightness. The sun would spend 7 hours of the night making this journey under the earth. In the 8th hour of the night, the 400 angels would bring back the sun's crown from God and place it back on the sun's head. Then the sun would become bright and beautiful again, ready to rise in the east and give light to the earth for another day. As the sun prepared to rise each morning, the phoenixes and chalcedras would burst into song. Their singing was so beautiful and so joyful that every bird on earth would hear it and start singing too. This is why birds sing so much in the early morning. They are joining in with the heavenly creatures who celebrate the sunrise every day. The phoenixes and chalcedras would sing, "The light giver is coming to give brightness to the whole world. The morning watch appears, which is the sun's rays. The sun comes out over the face of the earth and takes back his brightness to give light to all the face of the earth." Through all of this, Enoch learned that the sun was not just a ball of fire that happened to be in the sky. The sun was part of God's carefully planned system for taking care of the earth. Every sunrise and sunset, every change of season, every bit of heat and light that reaches the earth, all of it was controlled by God's angels and heavenly creatures working together in perfect harmony. The angels also showed Enoch how the moon worked. The moon had 12 gates that it traveled through, and it followed a similar but different pattern than the sun. The moon's journey was more complicated because it had to coordinate with the sun to create the months and years that people use to measure time. Enoch learned that the moon goes through its gates in a specific pattern. It might spend 31 days going through the first gate, then 35 days through the second gate, then 30 days through the third gate, and so on. The exact number of days for each gate changed depending on what time of year it was and how the moon needed to coordinate with the sun. The moon also had 6 wings and could move very quickly through the sky. It was lower than the sun and moved faster than the heavenly winds. The moon had its own angels who traveled with it, making sure it stayed on the right path and gave the right amount of light to the earth. All of this complex movement of the sun and moon created the calendar that people on Earth used. The solar year had 365 and a quarter days. The lunar year had 354 days. The difference between these two kinds of years had to be carefully managed so that the seasons would happen at the right times. Enoch was amazed to learn that there was a great cycle of 532 years that kept everything perfectly coordinated. Every few years, extra days had to be added or subtracted to keep the sun and moon working together properly. This was all planned and managed by God's angels in the 4th heaven. As Enoch watched all of this incredible organization, he realized that time itself was a gift from God. The way that days and nights, months and years, and seasons all worked together was not an accident. It was a beautiful system designed by God to give structure and rhythm to life on Earth. But there was still much more for Enoch to see. The angels told him that the 4th heaven was just the middle of his journey. There were still 6 more heavens above this one, each with its own amazing secrets to reveal. So they prepared to lift him up to the 5th heaven, where he would encounter some of the most important angels in all of creation. The 5th heaven was a place that filled Enoch with both wonder and sadness. As soon as he arrived there, he could see that this heaven was different from all the others he had visited so far. There were many angels here, more than he could count, but something was wrong with them. These angels were called Grigori, which means watchers. They had been given that name because their original job was to watch over the earth and make sure everything was going well there. They were supposed to be some of God's most trusted servants, with important responsibilities for taking care of the world. The Grigori looked like human beings, but they were much larger than any human that had ever lived. They were bigger even than the giants that sometimes lived on Earth. But even though they were huge and should have been impressive, there was something very sad about them. Their faces were full of sadness and shame. They could not speak because they were so full of guilt about what they had done. There was no happy singing or praising of God in the 5th heaven like there had been in other heavens. Instead, there was just silence and sadness. Enoch asked the angels who were guiding him, "Why do these angels look so sad? Why are their faces so unhappy? Why are their mouths silent? Why is there no worship of God in this heaven?" The guide angels answered him with a story that explained one of the most important events that had ever happened in the history of the world. They said, "These are the Grigori who turned away from the Lord. There were 2 million of them, and they followed their prince, whose name was Satanael." The angels continued, "These watchers were supposed to stay in heaven and do their jobs of watching over the earth from a distance, but instead, they decided to leave heaven and go down to the earth themselves. 3 of their leaders went down first to a place called Mount Hermon. This was the beginning of a disaster that changed everything on Earth. The guide angels explained, when these watchers got to Earth, they saw the daughters of men, and they thought these human women were very beautiful. The watchers decided they wanted to marry these women, even though angels were not supposed to marry humans. This decision led to terrible consequences. When the angels married human women, their children were not normal humans. They were giants, much bigger and stronger than regular people. But these giants were not gentle and good like their angel fathers were supposed to be. Instead, they were violent and cruel. The guide angels told Enoch, the wives of the watchers created great evil during this whole time. They acted in ways that were against God's laws. The mixing of angels and humans produced giants and great monsters. These creatures brought great hatred and violence to the earth. But the problems did not stop there. The fallen watchers also taught humans things they were not supposed to know. They taught them how to make weapons of war. They taught them about magic and sorcery. They taught them about makeup and jewelry and how to be vain about their appearance. They taught them about astrology and other ways of trying to predict the future without asking God. All of these teachings seemed good to the humans at first, but they actually caused great harm. When people learned to make better weapons, they started more wars. When they learned about magic, they stopped trusting in God and started trying to control things through their own power. When they became obsessed with their appearance, they became proud and selfish. The worst part was that the giant children of the Watchers became more and more violent. They were so big and strong that regular humans could not defend themselves against them. The giants began to eat people and drink their blood. They destroyed crops and animals. They made life on Earth a nightmare for regular human beings. When God saw what was happening, he was very angry. The Watchers had disobeyed his commands and brought terrible evil to the earth. The giants were destroying everything good that God had made. Something had to be done to stop this disaster. So God decided to judge the fallen Watchers. He sent his good angels to capture them and punish them. Some of the Watchers were thrown into the dark second heaven that Enoch had already seen. Others were imprisoned in even worse places. But the Watchers in the fifth heaven were given a different kind of punishment. These Watchers were allowed to stay in the fifth heaven, but they had to watch their brothers being tortured in the lower heavens. They had to live with the knowledge that their rebellion had brought disaster to the earth and punishment to themselves. They could not sing or worship God anymore because they were too ashamed of what they had done. The guide angels said to Enoch, God has judged all the fallen Watchers with a great judgment. The ones you see here mourn for their brothers who are being punished. They will continue to be sad until the great day of the Lord, when all things will be made right. Enoch felt very sorry for these fallen angels. Even though they had done wrong, it was sad to see creatures who had once been so beautiful and good, now filled with such sadness and regret. Enoch said to them, I have seen your brothers and their deeds and their sufferings and their great sorrow. I have prayed for them, but the Lord has sentenced them to be under the earth until heaven and earth come to an end forever. Then Enoch asked them, why are you just waiting here for your brothers? Why don't you worship God anymore? You should start singing and praising the Lord again, so that you do not make God even more angry with you. The watchers listened to Enoch's advice, and for the first time in a very long time, they responded. They stood up and arranged themselves in 4 groups in the 5th heaven. Then, as Enoch watched, 4 trumpets sounded together with a great noise, and the Gregory began to sing in harmony for the first time since their fall. Their voices rose up to the face of the Lord, and their song was full of sadness, but also full of hope. They were asking God to forgive them and have mercy on them. Even though they knew they could never undo the damage they had caused, they still hoped that somehow God might find a way to show them kindness. This moment in the 5th heaven taught Enoch something very important about forgiveness and hope. Even when someone has done something very wrong, it is never too late to turn back to God and ask for mercy. God does not want anyone to stay in sadness and shame forever. He wants everyone to come back to Him, even if they have to face the consequences of their wrong choices. But Enoch also learned that our choices have consequences that we cannot always fix. The watchers could be sorry for what they had done, and they could start worshipping God again, but they could not bring back the people who had been killed by the giants. They could not undo the evil they had taught to humans. Their sorrow was real, but so was the damage they had caused. As Enoch prepared to leave the 5th heaven, he looked back at the watchers with compassion. They were a reminder that even the most powerful beings in creation need to obey God. They showed that rebellion against God always leads to sadness and loss, even for angels. But they also showed that it is possible to turn back to God and start doing right again, even after making terrible mistakes. The sound of their voices joining together in worship gave Enoch hope that God's mercy is bigger than any sin, and that someday all things might be made right again. The guide angels could see that Enoch had learned what he needed to learn in the 5th heaven. Now it was time to show him the 6th heaven, where he would see angels who had remained faithful to God and were doing the work they were supposed to do. When Enoch arrived in the 6th heaven, it was like stepping from a place of sadness into a place of pure joy and light. The difference between the 5th heaven and the 6th heaven was like the difference between a funeral and a celebration. In the 6th heaven, Enoch saw 7 groups of angels who were so bright and glorious that it was almost hard to look at them. Their faces were more radiant than the sun at noon. All of these angels looked exactly the same. There were no differences in their faces, no differences in their size, and no differences in the style of their clothing. They were perfectly uniform, like members of the most disciplined army that had ever existed. But these angels were not soldiers preparing for war. They were workers who had been given the most important jobs in all of creation. Their work was to study and control the movements of all the stars, the revolution of the sun, the phases of the moon, and the well-being of the entire cosmos. These angels never rested from their work. Day and night, they watched over the universe to make sure everything was working the way it was supposed to. When they saw anything that was not right, they would immediately take action to fix it. They put the commandments and instructions of God in order, and they made sure that all of creation followed God's laws. But their work was not grim or difficult. These angels loved their jobs, and they did their work while singing the most beautiful songs. Their music was sweet and harmonious, and it filled the sixth heaven with sounds of praise and glory to God. The guide angels explained to Enoch that these 7 groups were actually archangels, the highest-ranking angels in all of creation, except for those who stood directly before God's throne. These archangels were over all the other angels, and they made sure that everything in heaven and on earth worked together in harmony. Some of these archangels were in charge of the seasons and years. They made sure that spring came at the right time, that summer was not too hot, that fall brought the right weather for harvesting crops, and that winter was not too harsh for people and animals to survive. Other archangels were in charge of rivers and oceans. They made sure that rivers flowed in the right directions, and that the oceans did not overflow their boundaries. They controlled the tides and the currents, and they made sure that there was always enough fresh water for people and animals to drink. Still, other archangels were in charge of all the fruits of the earth and every kind of grass and plant. They made sure that crops grew well and that there was enough food for every living thing. They controlled which plants grew where, and they made sure that the soil had the right nutrients to support life. Some of the most important archangels had the job of recording all human souls and all their deeds and their lives before the face of the Lord. These angels kept perfect records of everything that every person did during their time on earth. Nothing was forgotten and nothing was missed. Every act of kindness and every act of cruelty was written down in their books. In the midst of these 7 groups of archangels, Enoch saw 7 phoenixes, 7 cherubim, and 7 6-winged beings, all singing together with one voice. Their song was so beautiful and so perfect that Enoch could not even describe it properly. He just knew that it was the most wonderful sound he had ever heard, and that God was delighted when he heard this music from his faithful servants. The 6th heaven was a place of perfect order and perfect joy. Unlike the 5th heaven, where the fallen angels sat in sad silence, the 6th heaven was full of activity and praise. The angels here had remained faithful to God, and as a result, they got to do the work they loved and be close to the God they adored. Enoch realized that this was what heaven was supposed to be like. It was not a place where everyone sat around doing nothing. It was a place where everyone had important work to do, work that they loved and were perfectly suited for. It was a place where everyone worked together in harmony, with no jealousy or competition or conflict. The archangels in the 6th heaven showed Enoch that service to God is not a burden, but a privilege. When we do the work that God gives us to do, we get to be part of the amazing system that keeps the whole universe running smoothly. We get to contribute to something much bigger and more important than ourselves. Enoch also learned that faithfulness has rewards. The angels who had remained loyal to God got to stay in this place of beauty and joy and important work. They did not have to sit in darkness like the fallen angels in the 2nd heaven, or live with shame and regret like the watchers in the 5th heaven. As Enoch watched these archangels doing their work with such skill and joy, he began to understand something about God's character. God is not a tyrant who forces his servants to do work they hate. Instead, God gives each of his servants work that perfectly matches their abilities and interests. The angels love their jobs because God designed them to love their jobs. This made Enoch think about his own life on earth. He had always tried to walk with God and do what God wanted him to do. Now he could see that this was not just about following rules or avoiding punishment. It was about getting to be part of God's amazing plan for the universe. The sixth heaven was also a place of incredible beauty. The light that came from the 7 groups of archangels was not harsh or blinding, but warm and welcoming. Their singing created harmonies that seemed to make the very air sparkle with joy. Everything in this heaven was perfectly clean and perfectly organized, but it was not cold or sterile. It was alive with love and purpose. Enoch could have stayed in the 6th heaven for a very long time, just watching the archangels work and listening to their beautiful songs. But his guide angels reminded him that there were still more heavens to see, and that the most amazing parts of his journey were yet to come. As they prepared to lift him up to the 7th heaven, Enoch looked back one more time at the archangels in their 7 groups. He wanted to remember their faces and their songs, because he knew that what he was about to see in the higher heavens would be even more overwhelming and amazing. The archangels seemed to know that Enoch was leaving, and they all turned to look at him. For a moment, their singing became even more beautiful, as if they were giving him a special farewell song. Then the guide angels lifted Enoch up, and he rose toward the 7th heaven, where he would come closer to God than any human being had ever come before. When Enoch entered the 7th heaven, he immediately knew that he was in a place unlike anything he had ever experienced or imagined. The light here was so bright and so intense that it was almost like being inside the sun itself. But this was not the painful brightness that would hurt your eyes. This was the brightness of pure holiness and perfect love. In the 7th heaven, Enoch saw the fiery armies of the great archangels. These were not just any angels, but the most powerful and important angels in all of creation. They were made of fire, but it was holy fire that burned without destroying. Their very presence made the air around them glow with divine energy. There were also incorporeal forces in the 7th heaven. These were spiritual beings that did not have bodies like the angels Enoch had seen before. They were pure spirit, pure power, pure obedience to God. They moved through the 7th heaven like living thoughts, carrying out God's will at the speed of light. Enoch saw dominions and origins and authorities, all different kinds of spiritual beings with different jobs and different levels of power. He saw cherubim and seraphim, the angels who are closest to God's throne. He saw many-eyed thrones, mysterious beings that seemed to be made of eyes that could see everything in the universe at once. There were also 5 regiments of angels arranged in perfect formation, and shining stations where other types of angels stood at attention. The organization in the 7th heaven was more complex and more perfect than anything on earth. Every being had a specific place and a specific job, and they all worked together like the parts of a perfect machine. But this was not a cold, mechanical place. It was full of life and joy and worship. The sound of praise that rose from the seventh heaven was like 1,000,000 choirs singing in perfect harmony. It was music that seemed to come from the very foundation of the universe itself. When Enoch first arrived in the seventh heaven, he was so overwhelmed that he was terrified. He began to tremble with fear because he knew he was in the presence of power that was beyond anything a human being was supposed to experience. The holiness and glory around him made him feel very small and very unworthy. But his guide angels quickly came to his side and said to him, "Be brave, Enoch. Do not be frightened." They helped him to stand up and gave him strength to bear the incredible glory that surrounded him. Then the angels showed Enoch something that was even more amazing than anything he had seen so far. From a great distance, they showed him the Lord God himself, sitting on his incredibly high throne. Even from far away, the sight of God was so overwhelming that Enoch could barely comprehend what he was seeing. But the guide angels explained to Enoch that what he was seeing was not even God's full glory. They said, "What you see here in the seventh heaven is wonderful, but there are still 3 more heavens above this one. The Lord God himself lives in the 10th heaven, which in the Hebrew language is called Aravoth." As if to prove this point, all the heavenly armies that Enoch could see came and stood in 10 steps, arranged according to their ranks and importance. The armies from the first heaven stood on the first step. The armies from the second heaven stood on the second step, and so on, all the way up to the armies from the 10th heaven on the highest step. All of these armies bowed down and worshipped the Lord at the same time. It was the most incredible display of unity and reverence that could possibly be imagined. Billions upon billions of angels and other heavenly beings, all bowing down together to honor the God who had created them all. After they had finished their worship, all the heavenly armies went back to their places with joy and happiness and incredible light. They were singing songs with soft and gentle voices, but even their soft singing was more beautiful than the loudest and most skilled choirs on earth. In the 7th heaven, Enoch also got to see more clearly the angels who never leave God's presence. These were the cherubim and seraphim who stand around God's throne all the time. They had 6 wings each, and they had many eyes that could see everything that happened anywhere in the universe. These special angels covered God's entire throne with their wings, and they sang continuously without ever getting tired. Their song was the famous song that some people on earth had heard in visions. "Holy, holy, holy, Lord God of hosts, heaven and earth are full of his glory." This song never stopped. Day and night, for all eternity, these angels kept singing this song of praise to God. It was the song that all other worship was trying to copy. It was the song that held the universe together with its perfect harmony and perfect truth. But even though the 7th heaven was more amazing than anything Enoch could have dreamed, his guide angels told him that his journey was not over yet. They had brought him as far as they were allowed to go, but God wanted Enoch to go even higher. The guide angels said to him, "Enoch, we have been commanded to travel with you up to this point, but now we must leave you." With these words, the angels who had been with Enoch since the beginning of his journey disappeared from his sight. Enoch was suddenly alone at the edge of the seventh heaven, and he became terrified again. He fell on his face and said to himself, "Oh no, what has happened to me?" He did not know how he could continue his journey without his faithful guides. But God did not leave Enoch alone for long. The Lord sent one of his most glorious angels, the archangel Gabriel, to take care of Enoch from this point on. Gabriel was one of the most important angels in all of creation, and the fact that God sent him personally to guide Enoch showed how special this journey was. Gabriel said to Enoch, "Be brave, Enoch. Do not be frightened. Stand up and come with me. You are going to stand in front of the face of the Lord forever." But Enoch was still scared and confused. He said to Gabriel, "Oh no, my Lord. My soul has left my body because of fear and terror. Please call back the two men who brought me to this place, because I trusted them and felt safe with them. I want to go with them into the presence of the Lord." Gabriel understood Enoch's fear, but he knew that Enoch was ready for what came next, even if Enoch did not feel ready. Gabriel picked Enoch up like a leaf picked up by the wind and carried him upward to the eighth heaven. In the eighth heaven, which in Hebrew is called Muzaloth, Enoch saw the forces that control the changing of the seasons from dry to wet and back again. He saw the 12 signs of the zodiac, which were above the seventh heaven and helped to regulate time and seasons on earth. Then Gabriel carried Enoch even higher to the ninth heaven. In Hebrew, this heaven is called Kukavim, which means stars. Here Enoch saw the heavenly houses where the 12 zodiac signs lived when they were not actively working to control the seasons on earth. But all of this was just preparation for the most incredible part of Enoch's journey. Gabriel was carrying him to the 10th heaven, where he would see God face to face and learn secrets that no other human being had ever been told. As they rose toward the 10th heaven, Enoch knew that his life was about to change forever. He was about to experience something that would transform him from an ordinary man into something entirely new. The 7th heaven had been amazing, but it was nothing compared to what was waiting for him in the 10th heaven, in the very presence of Almighty God. When Gabriel brought Enoch into the 10th heaven, called Aravoth, Enoch saw the face of the Lord God himself. This was the moment that the entire journey had been leading up to. This was the experience that would change Enoch forever and give him knowledge that no other human being possessed. Enoch tried to describe what he saw, but he found that human words were not enough to capture the reality of God's appearance. He said that God's face was like iron that had been made burning hot in a fire and then brought out while it was still glowing and throwing off sparks. But even this comparison could not really explain what it was like to look upon the face of the Creator of the universe. Enoch said, "The face of the Lord is not something that can be talked about. It is so very marvelous and supremely awesome and supremely frightening. Who am I to give an account of the incomprehensible being of the Lord and of his face, so extremely strange and indescribable? Everything about God was beyond human understanding. God had many commands, and his voice had multiple tones that could communicate countless different things at the same time. The Lord's throne was supremely great and was not made by human hands or by any created being. It existed because God willed it to exist. Around God's throne were choir stalls filled with cherubim and seraphim armies. Their singing never stopped, and their songs were more beautiful than any music that had ever been heard anywhere else in creation. The beauty of God's appearance was always changing, but never changing. It was something that could not be described because there was nothing else like it to compare it to. When Enoch saw all of this glory, he fell down flat on his face and worshipped the Lord. He was completely overwhelmed by the greatness and majesty of God. He felt like the smallest, most insignificant creature in all of creation, and yet God had brought him here to see these amazing things. Then something incredible happened. The Lord God himself spoke to Enoch with his own mouth. God said, "Be brave, Enoch. Do not be frightened. Stand up and stand in front of my face forever." God was inviting Enoch to stay in his presence permanently. This was an honor that had never been given to any human being before. But God was not finished with the amazing things he was going to do for Enoch. God told Michael, the archistratic, which means the commander of all the angels, to lift Enoch up and bring him directly in front of God's face. Then God spoke to all his servants, asking them what they thought about letting Enoch join them permanently. God said, "Let Enoch join in and stand in front of my face forever." All of God's glorious servants bowed down and said, "Let Enoch stay here according to your word, O Lord." But then God did something even more amazing. He told Michael to take Enoch's earthly clothing off of him and anoint him with God's own special oil. Then Michael was to dress Enoch in clothes of glory, the same kind of clothes that the angels wore. Michael did exactly what God commanded. He anointed Enoch with oil that was more beautiful than the greatest light. This oil felt like sweet dew and smelled better than myrrh. It was like the rays of the glittering sun, but even more wonderful. When Michael had finished anointing Enoch and dressing him in the clothes of glory, Enoch looked at himself and discovered that he had become like one of God's glorious angels. There was no visible difference between him and the other heavenly beings. He had been transformed from a mortal man into an immortal angel. But God was still not finished with the gifts he wanted to give to Enoch. He called for one of his archangels named Vrevoal, who was swifter in wisdom than all the other archangels, and whose job it was to record all of the Lord's deeds. God said to Vrevoal, "Bring out the books from my storehouses, and get a pen for speed writing, and give it to Enoch so he can read the books." Vrevoal hurried to obey God's command. He brought Enoch the books from God's personal library, along with a special pen for writing very quickly. These were not ordinary books with ordinary information. These were the books that contained all the secrets of creation, all the mysteries of how the universe worked, and all the knowledge that God had about everything that had ever happened or ever would happen. For the next 30 days and 30 nights, Vrevoal taught Enoch everything that was in God's books. Vrevoal's mouth never stopped speaking during this entire time, and Enoch never stopped listening and writing. Enoch did not rest or sleep during these 30 days. He was too excited about all the amazing things he was learning. Vrevoal taught Enoch about all the things of heaven and earth and sea, and all the elements. Enoch learned about the movements of the planets and stars and their courses. He learned about seasons and years and days and hours. He learned about how clouds form and how winds blow. Enoch also learned about the number of angels and the songs that the angelic armies sing. He learned about every kind of human thing and every kind of language and singing. He learned about human life and rules and instructions. He learned about beautiful singing and everything that it is appropriate for someone to learn. But the most amazing thing that Enoch learned was the story of how God created everything. This was information that God had never shared with anyone else, not even with his angels. God was telling Enoch the secrets of creation that had been hidden since the beginning of time. After 30 days and 30 nights of learning, Vrevoal told Enoch that there was still more for him to write. Vrevoal said, "All these things that I have taught you, and that you have learned, and that you have written down, now you must write about all the souls of people, including those who are not yet born, and the places that have been prepared for them for eternity." Vrevoal explained, "All souls are prepared for eternity even before the earth was made." This meant that God had planned for every person who would ever live, even before he created the world for them to live in. So Enoch sat down for a second period of 30 days and 30 nights, and he wrote down everything about human souls and their eternal destinies. When he had finished all of this writing, Enoch had completed 366 books full of the most important knowledge in the universe. Then God called Enoch to come and sit beside him. God said, "Enoch, sit to the left of me with Gabriel." This was an incredible honor. Enoch was being invited to sit right next to God himself, in the place usually reserved for the highest archangels. Enoch bowed down to the Lord, and then God began to tell him the most amazing secrets of all. God said, "Enoch, beloved, whatever you see and whatever things are standing still or moving around were brought to perfection by me. I myself will explain everything to you." Then God told Enoch the story of creation, but not the simple version that most people know. God told him the complete story, with all the details and all the secrets that had never been revealed before. God said, "Before anything existed at all, from the very beginning, I created everything that exists from nothing. I made the visible things from invisible things. Not even to my angels have I explained my secrets, or told them about their origin, or about my endlessness and my inconceivableness, as I am explaining them to you today." God continued, "Before any visible things existed, I, the One, moved around in the invisible things, like the sun moves from east to west and from west to east. But the sun has rest in himself, while I did not find rest, because everything was not yet created. So I thought up the idea of establishing a foundation to create a visible creation. Then God described how he had created light and darkness. He commanded the lowest things to let one of the invisible things descend visibly. A being called Adoil descended, extremely large, and in his belly was a great light. God told Adoil to break apart, and when he did, a very great light came out. God was in the midst of this great light, and from this light came all the light that exists in the universe. God placed a throne for himself and sat down on it. Then he told the light to go up higher than the throne and become the foundation for all the highest things. Next, God called out a second time to the lowest things and said, "Let one of the invisible things come out visibly, solid." A being called Arcus came out, solid and heavy and very red. God told Arcus to open up, and when he did, there came out an age that was dark and very large, carrying the creation of all lower things. God told this dark age to come down low and become solid, and it became the foundation of all the lowest things. There was nothing lower than this darkness, except nothing itself. Then God took some of the light and some of the darkness and commanded them to become thick and be wrapped around with light. This became water. God spread the water above the darkness and below the light, and this created the solid waters, which is the same as the bottomless. God made a foundation of light around the water and created 7 great circles inside it. He gave them an appearance of crystal, both wet and dry, like glass and ice. These circles became the paths for water and the other elements. God pointed out to each of the 7 stars their route, with each star traveling in its own heaven according to God's plan. God made a division between the light and the darkness in the middle of the waters. He said to the light that it should be day, and to the darkness he commanded that it should be night. Evening came, and morning came, and this was the first day. God continued to tell Enoch about each day of creation, but with much more detail than had ever been revealed before. On the second day, God made the solid structure of heaven and established it above the waters. He gathered the lower waters into one collection and made their waves become dry. From the waves he created rocks, solid and big, and from the rocks he assembled the dry land, which he called earth.